Democrats every election. Before the 2016 campaign, an FBI lawyer changed evidence before a secret court. Before the 2018 campaign, the FBI was breathing life into the lying Steele dossier. Before the 2020 campaign, you saw the FBI doing everything they could to make you think that Trump was somehow a Russian agent or shaking down Vladimir Zelensky. And then before 2022, they raided Mar-a-Lago, all the while suppressing the information on the Hunter Biden laptop and suppressing anything that was derogatory to Joe Biden.
Not that that sort of thing is really important to the people at the New York Times. Well, happy Thursday to you and welcome to America 2023. That was Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. He's fun. He's been on my television show on Newsmax. How many nights have we been on so far, Michael? 8 nights. Hey, so you got it right. That's 8 nights is correct. Tonight will be night number 9. And Matt Gaetz has been great and smart and good fun on Chris Plant, The Right Squad, 9 p.m. Eastern time on the Newsmax channel. Be there. Otherwise, be some sort of pointillist cubist, whatever it is that you want to be. I've got a lot, as always, to get to. You know that the national debt of the United States of America today is at $31.790 trillion, plus, a couple $100 million here and there. Not a big deal because, we're the wealthiest country in the world, so we can go bankrupt bigger than any country in the history of the world, which I think is the plan of the Democrat Party, isn't it? And now they've got a radical left-wing, a Bolshevik, Democrat member of Congress who's also a racist, devout racist. Her name is Cori Bush, and she's got a plan. Are you familiar with Cori Bush? She says the craziest things, doesn't she? And she's got a new plan. Her new plan is to take $14 trillion from the white people and give that $14 trillion to the black people. And how's that going to happen? They're going to happen on a subway train in New York? What's going to be going on with that? Well, she's got a plan. I'll share that with you because it's reparations time in America, and $14 trillion is today's operating number. In California recently, and Gavin Newsom ran away from this, didn't he? The Democrat governor out there. He's run away from their proposal. What do they want to give, $1.2 million? That was not average, but, an African-American person could apply for money. There was never slavery in California, ever, under the United States of America. But never mind that. That's not important. I get the Spaniards, perhaps. They should sue the Spaniards and the Portuguese, and they should sue the Asante tribesmen in Ghana who sold their fellow Africans from opposing tribes to the Europeans when the Europeans came down in big wooden boats and said, hey, you got any people to sell here? And the Africans in Ghana said, sure we do. Wait right here. And they went and rounded up a bunch of Africans from their neighboring tribes, and they sold them for, various things, gold and stuff, to the Europeans. And then the Europeans sailed across the ocean blue and came over here. And it's a terrible thing. And it was centuries ago for those that are keeping track of the passage of time. It was centuries ago. And nobody alive today was alive then, except Joe Biden, other than Joe Biden. But nobody else. So we've got that going. I want to get into that today. We started today with Congressman Matt Gaetz talking about the corrupt FBI, how corrupt the FBI is. And the FBI and the CIA, they have tampered with, corrupted our elections going back to Donald Trump running against Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton in 2016. And then, of course, the midterms in 2018, and then the presidential election in 2020 against President Trump, against the Republicans, then against President Trump again, in favor of the Democrats, and then in favor of the Democrats again. And Joe Biden, who is a brain-damaged sock puppet, is now living in the White House, which is kind of an interesting thing. And then in 2022, they tampered again, and Hillary Clinton has already predicted that what is an evil right-wing cabal of some kind, a vast right-wing conspiracy, is already poised to steal the 2024 presidential election. That's what Hillary Clinton has said. And she also said that the 2016 election was stolen from her. Am I right?
Right-wing extremists already have a plan to literally steal the next presidential election.
That's right. That's 2024. And that's why the FBI and probably the entire intelligence community has to get involved in throwing our election in favor of the Democrats because, you know, corruption is kind of the norm in Washington, D.C. and in the U.S. government. And it's so pervasive that I think we're going to have to adopt another language. Hey, wait a minute. We are adopting another language. It's Espanol. And you remember Barack Obama warned us years ago that we shouldn't worry about the tsunami of immigrants invading our country from the South that the Democrats are orchestrating. We should worry about making sure that our kids learn to speak Spanish because the Democrat Party has a plan for the country.
Instead of worrying about whether immigrants can learn English, they'll learn English. You need to make sure your child can speak Spanish.
Yeah, because, you know, when you go over to Obama's house, they're going to have a lot of servants, And that's what they always say. Who is it? Hank Johnson, who thinks that islands flip over, said just last week, and the Democrats say it quite frequently, that, we need people to clean the toilets and to dust out restaurants and things. This is the way the Democrats view the tsunami of immigrants. Forget about the 107,000 fatal drug overdoses last year, a number greater than the total number of Americans killed in the Vietnam War and the Korean War combined. Forget all about that. That's got nothing to do with anything. But it's not all good news. There's lots of other news too. Retail theft. Democrats have made shoplifting and mob shoplifting normal. They've normalized crime to the point where have you heard about the Target? You know, the Target stores. It's a French chain of markets across the country, and they're losing so much money. How much money? I'll share it with you. That their stock numbers are plummeting, their value is plummeting. They're shutting down stores in major cities and fleeing because they can't make money anymore. It's all because of the Democrat Party. And we got that. And theft cost retailers nearly $100 billion last year. And Cori Bush says, that's nothing. I'm going to clip you guys of $14 trillion because they're the Democrats. And by the way, they're the party of slavery and plantations and the bullwhip. And Jefferson Davis, the Confederate States of America, Nathan Bedford Forrest created the KKK, big statewide leader of the Democrat Party. They're the party of standing in schoolhouse doors, the party of Jim Crow, the party of Sheriff Bull Connor, the party of James Earl Ray, who shot Martin Luther King. He was a Democrat presidential campaign volunteer, but pay no attention to any of that. Cori Bush is a Democrat, too. Probably tells you all you need to know. Remarkable stuff. So I want to tell you about the retail theft and specifically the Target chain of stores. Remarkable stuff. And right now there's a big hearing going on having to do with FBI corruption. Republicans in the House of Representatives. That's why it's important to control at least one House of Congress so you can try to get some accountability in Washington. It's not easy. With all the filthy, rotten corruption. And it goes right to the top, right to the very top. It goes into the Oval Office, and it goes into the editor-in-chief's room at the Washington Post. It's a remarkable thing to see. But we've got that, and I've got a bunch for you on the corrupt FBI because they are corrupt. Remarkable stuff. And the Democrats, like Adam Schiffless and MSDNC, just dismissing the Durham report because it's about them. And this is what information dominance is all about. We've got that. I got an update for you on Bud Light. Bud Light not doing real well. I was out with a friend last night. I went to a rooftop sports bar, and my friend, he likes bottles of Bud Light, and he was getting bottles of Bud Light, but I'm not getting it. I still haven't had a bottle of Bud Light since they politicized my beer of choice. Can you people just leave anything alone? The NBA, the NFL, Coca-Cola, Bud Light. Is there anything, schools, transgender? You see that Target is also catching a little heat because they've got little girl swimsuits that are designed for boys. Can you leave the kids alone? Just don't call them pedophiles. What do they call them? MAPs, minor attracted persons. And don't be critical of someone just because they want to have sex with a 5-year-old. That's what they're teaching in school now. Also, Marco Rubio with a report on the Wuhan Red Death coming out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I came out with this report more than a couple of years ago, but it wasn't published by the Congress. But I was right nonetheless. So we got that update on Harry and Meghan, who have a lot of issues. We'll just say they've got a lot of issues. And I've got hilarious movie news. Hilarious news out of Hollywood, California. And we have an update on the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. The Wienermobile, because we got the Wienermobile going. There's also a story out of the West Coast. There is how old is she? A 35-year-old woman who identifies as a 15-year-old boy. She's, and is that right? 35? She's a woman in her 30s, and she identifies as she's 35. 35-year-old woman, but she says, I'm a 15-year-old boy. And she hangs out with young teenagers, and they describe her as pedophile-ish, right? Like Swedish, Irish, pedophile-ish. She identifies as a 15-year-old boy, 35-year-old woman. But this is honestly what the Democrat Party has done to women and to adults and to people, to humanity. It's quite extraordinary. Boy, I'm telling you. So I got the pedophile-ish. But the Hollywood news, I think the Hollywood news is my favorite. It comes with music, the story that I have for you about Hollywood. There's music associated with it. There's gunfire. There's mayhem. It's a lot of fun, the Hollywood news. So we'll get to all that and a whole lot more, no doubt, because things are happening even as we speak, and it's a 3-hour-long program, and that's half the workday in Washington, D.C., at least. In fact, it's the only part of the day where anything gets done. But from reparations to Hollywood, we got it all for you. Right now, let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's take a call. We're at 888-630-9625. I got Al Charlatan, too. Al Charlatan is in the news today. Fear not. Some Black Lives Matter. That we know. And when? I'll explain when. Adidas also in the, not just Nike with their Chinese slave labor and all that stuff, lining the pockets of LeBron James, but now Adidas has some issues too, and it has to do with genitals, genitalia, gender, all these gen things. Let's go. It should be called Gen, they got Gen X and Gen Z. It should be called Gen, because they're like gender. What is going on with these people? Let's go to Matt calling from St. Louis, Missouri. Matthew, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. Happy Ascension Day in Reparatopia. And I've got 3 options I think are acceptable for reparations for you. And then if you want, I've also got a rundown on the royal family since they're in the news again. But, reparations are a giant scam, of course, but there are 3 I think that I could live with. The first one, and I think you and Mark Levin have mentioned this before, that's to make the actual culprits responsible pay for it, which would be the Democrat Party. And for that option, people could keep coming back for more, kind of like Stormy Daniels with a non-disclosure agreement. So multiple times at the trough would be good for option 1. Option 2 would be a one-time thing, but acceptance of reparations there would be accompanied by automatic citizenship revocation and permanent expulsion from the country. And they'd have to move at their own expense since they'd be flush with cash at that point. Option 3, the greatly preferred option 3, is the best of both worlds. It combines those two. So the beauty would be it flips the script. Rather than the usual, Democrats buying voters using our money, instead they'd have to pay. They'd be forced to pay to get rid of their own voters. So I think option 3 is the way to go if we have to do it at all.
Comes with deportation. And also, I think maybe the British royal family, the European powers that inflicted. Now, here's the thing: slavery. Like if you're Jewish, I think you should go to the Egyptians for reparations. Let's go back to Moses. If we're going to go in the Wayback Machine here, let's get back to Moses and reparations from the Egyptians who built those pyramids. I think Israel should be given the pyramids as a make good. And the Sphinx, get that Sphinx too. Needs a lot of repairs. Have you been there? It's going to need some stucco or bondo or something like that. Yeah, reparations, that's a good idea. For how about the 20-year-olds whose parents came from Vietnam and fled communism? Do they owe Cori Bush? Yes, they do. Who else? Well, everybody. Just shut up. The Irish that came long after slavery was done with. The state of California, where there never was slavery except maybe when the Spanish were going through. They're not good ideas, but at least they're racially divisive. And I do have more on Al Sharpton today, too. Hey, Chris here with some exciting news. Now you can listen to me live on the WMAL app. Doesn't matter if you're in your car, in the office, on the go. The WMAL app delivers crystal clear around-the-clock news coverage anywhere with cell service or Wi-Fi. So don't miss a second of your favorite shows. Download the WMAL app today on the Apple App Store or at Google Play Store. Yeah, I will play the audio for you. I will share the audio of Congresswoman Cori Bush calling for $14 trillion race hustle, a shakedown. Racially divisive, classic Democrat Party stuff. And they're kleptocrats, aren't they? That's the kleptocrat with a K. See? Because they are the party of those Ks and all that stuff. All right, let's take one more phone call, and then I gotta get to my Hollywood news sooner rather than later too, because my best girl and I were laughing it up big time on the couch this morning. Let's go to William calling from Silver Spring, Maryland. William, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Yeah, Chris, I'm driving. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Are you being chased by paparazzi?
No, I'm in the right lane going like 40 miles an hour, making everybody upset. Anyway, Chris, we've had reparations now for 60 years. It's called affirmative action. It's called special rate lower loans. It's called special lower standard admissions to colleges. We've had it for 60 years, and nobody brings that up.
Yes, and the Great Society and Lyndon Baines Johnson. And, of course, the Democrats implemented this stuff. So it's, largely been disastrous because when the government gets really involved in administering any sort of program, it normally turns out to be disastrous. But it's true, of course, from the Great Society programs and then they came in and demolished the nuclear family, which existed before, very intact in the African-American population in the United States before LBJ and the Great Society. But you're right, of course, that set-asides and all kinds of government programs, including, college that, Yeah.
And one more thing, Chris, is that so if they push this thing through, this insanity with reparations and destroy our economy, are they then going to automatically say, okay, we're going to get rid of affirmative action and special programs and stuff?
Well, I think you probably know the answer to that, don't you, William?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. They're the left. They're not liberals. They're not trying to fix anything. They're trying to polarize and divide in order to win elections. And it's another fake promise. We're going to give you $1 million each if you vote for us. And the racist Republicans who, freed the slaves and then a Democrat shot Abe Lincoln in the head and killed him. Usual stuff. Cori Bush coming up. Also, apparently left-wing radical, lunatic, glassy-eyed zombie protesters at the United States Capitol yesterday, and Republican Congressman Clay Higgins had to manhandle one of the... Was he non-binary, Michael? It looked like maybe a bearded lady. Was it a bearded lady in the video?
Not enough testosterone.
Protesting. It looked like he might have been suffering from low T, a little bit of low T thing going on there. But we'll try to get to that, too. Well, let's get back to the reparations, because this sounds like a good idea. I think everyone can get behind this. What do you think? $14 trillion is the plan. Congresswoman Cori Bush, that's her name. House Dems introduced $14 trillion reparations proposal for descendants of slaves. The Irish were abused, railroads and indentured servitude, and Police, the reason, forget about police brutality of black people. You know that a billy club is called a billy club because the cops used them to beat up the damn Irish all the time. And a paddy wagon is called, paddy wagon is P-A-D-D-Y, which is a, for Patrick, right? Paddy O'Reilly, Paddy O'Shaughnessy, and, all that stuff. And the reason paddy wagons are called paddy wagons is because the cops used to fill them with the Irish because, they had a reputation of being drunk and getting in fights and stuff, a well-earned reputation, I might add. And then the, Billy Club, because they used them to beat the Irish, Billy over the head. They got Billies and they got Paddies. So they beat them over the head and then they throw them in the meat wagons and they give them rough rides back to the station. And so I want reparations for the Irish. And then there's the Basque side of my family. Must have been oppressed somewhere. My name until I was 5 years old was Orteg, Christopher Orteg, and my father was Jules Orteg, and had to be oppressed somewhere. I'm gonna look into that, and I'll get back to you. I want $1 trillion. I think I want $1 trillion. We should really offer everybody yachts of at least 100 feet, at least 100 feet. Depending on how oppressed you were, you might get a yacht of 300 feet. Might have to take Jeff Bezos's yacht and something like that. House Democrats introduced $14 trillion reparations proposal for descendants of slaves. This is a CBS station reporting the story. House Democrats introduced this bill on Wednesday, calling for $14 trillion worth of reparations. Again, keeping in mind that our national debt is currently at $31 trillion. So you add 31.7, it'll top 32 soon enough. So let's see, so 40, and we're going to have, a lot of debt. I think that's going to be a lot. Representative Cori Bush announced the resolution during a press conference, and the press took it seriously, claiming that the United States has, let's go to the audio of the crazy, radical, extremist Democrat from Missouri, who, I gotta tell you, your Democrat party. Here's Democrat Congresswoman from Missouri, Cori Bush.
The United States has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans
centuries ago. And really, I think this falls to the Democratic Party, doesn't it? And Republicans put together the Union Army, elected the first Republican President Abraham Lincoln, 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, right? The Emancipation Proclamation. And the Democrats decided to go to war rather than put up with that. Right? So we got that. And the idea that Cori Bush believes that she's in a position to dictate morality in the United States of America or any place else is rather ironic. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean. Congresswoman Cori Bush. Here's her hypothesis, that somehow over the course of centuries, Whitey has, she should really just call everybody Whitey, don't you think, has accumulated a greater amount of wealth, and that should be stolen at the point of a gun, the government. That reminds me of the Obama administration official. Yeah, Ron Bloom, who said they essentially agree with Chairman Mao that all power comes from the barrel of a gun, and that's the government, of course, and they want to take all your guns away so that only the government has guns.
We know this is largely about power, that it's an adults-only, no-limit game. We kind of agree with Mao that political power comes largely from the barrel of a gun.
Ron Bloom of the Obama administration, typical American Democrat. You may remember his communications director, Anita Dunn, also praised Chairman Mao. And here's Cori Bush, kind of living the dream here that you got the gun, you're the government, and those people over there have money. We're going to come take it.
We're looking at the black-white wealth gap. And which is about $14 trillion. So we have scholars like Dr. Sandy Darity and Jason Hinkle and others who have been working on a dollar amount, looking at what that is.
Yeah, a dollar amount, they're looking at what that is. This is mental illness. The Democrat Party is mentally ill. They at the highest levels. This is really extraordinary stuff. Therefore, the dollar figure that has been placed on this is $14 trillion. We'll just put that on the tab of the kids, including the black kids, and bankrupt them down there. But at least they'll have a bunch of money and 300-foot yachts, because that's the plan. Congresswoman Cori Bush, never mind that America is the arsenal of democracy and really the last best hope for freedom-loving people worldwide as China marches forward in the 21st century, paying off the Biden family for their acquiescence and pay no attention to any of that. And they're expanding their Navy to control the Pacific and to threaten our allies. Oh, yeah, Joe Biden, by the way, is in Japan, where the hand can be used as a knife, and he's in Hiroshima. I like to call it Hiroshima rather than Hiroshima, because that band, called Hiroshima. And my father fought in World War II as a Navy fighter pilot, and the Japanese, they murdered about 50 million people in the Pacific. They enslaved millions, the sex slaves. They called them comfort girls. The Unit 731, famous the Japanese military unit that nobody knows about. They used prisoners of war, including Americans and Brits, in biological warfare experiments, just like in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The Japanese were working on that back then. But back to Cori Bush, she said, yeah, we wage war and stuff and don't let totalitarians take over the world. And we need to take that money and give it to me.
If we can continue to fund these wars, when we can continue to put money hand over fist, trillions of dollars into forever wars, into the defense budget, we have to make sure, because we're talking about helping with things that are happening now when we did not repair what happened before, which we are still living through.
And which we're talking about things that are happening now or hundreds of years ago, as the case may be. This is it's demented, but at least it's divisive, which is really the goal and the objective is division. And since we're talking about Joe Biden he's in Hiroshima, and you see he's who our ambassador. He had Anthony Blinken with him, who's the guy that got the ball rolling on the whole fake intelligence letter, right? And then he became Secretary of State, the number one plum job in the administration, right? And that Jake Sullivan guy, the anemic, he'd talk about low T. There's a low T national security advisor. We've never had such a low T as low testosterone for Democrats listening. National security advisor. And also, this got very little notice as well. Somebody broke into Jake Sullivan's house the other day. He's got Secret Service protection at home, but somebody sauntered into his house, sashayed quite possibly into his house. But never mind that. And sitting next to him at the table was the U.S. ambassador to Japan. You know who the U.S. ambassador to Japan is? My high school classmate, Rahm Emanuel. Rahm Emanuel, the former and failed mayor of the city of Chicago, the former Obama White House chief of staff, and my NutriWest classmate in my youth. And he's the ambassador to Japan for the Biden administration. He was sitting there looking at his hand saying, why did I cut off my finger in a deli slicer accident? Which he did. But you see, Joe Biden, he was going from Japan. This was his big Asia swing. He was going to swing America. He was going to swing through Asia. He was going to Japan, to Hiroshima. I assume he was going to apologize for winning World War II, because it would have been so much better if they had won. I may have told this story once before. I was in the Philippines a number of years ago in Manila, and staying at the Manila Hotel, which was General MacArthur's headquarters, and then driven out by the Japanese, and then he returned, you may recall, back to the Manila Hotel. And very close to the Manila Hotel, there's an old Spanish fort. It's very medieval. It looks like a big torture chamber because it was. And the Japanese occupied the Philippines, of course, before we even entered the war, before they attacked us in Hawaii. And I went over with some Filipino people, and they toured me through this Spanish fort where there are basement dungeons, basement level subterranean dungeons. And they rounded up the Filipinos that were fighting the resistance against the Japanese. They rounded up almost all men, but not entirely, and they threw them down in these dungeness rooms on the lower level of this Spanish fort. And when they filled up the cells down there, they brought in fire hoses and they flooded the cells and drowned them all like rats, and then had Filipinos drag all the Filipino bodies out of there. And then they refilled the dungeons again with people they had captured in the resistance, and then they brought the fire hoses out again and they drowned them again and again. The Japanese seem so nice now, you go, just I'll have the volcano roll, and hot sake, and the hot sake, and a Sapporo. I'll have and a miso. I'd like a miso, please. But things were a little different a few years ago. They were in Imperial Japan. They had an emperor who was God and all that stuff. But in any case, Joe Biden is there and probably apologizing at Hiroshima. And then Nagasaki 3 days later, August 6th and August 9th, 1945, brought to a screeching halt the most horrendous war in the history of humankind. And Joe Biden is over there. And then he was going to go to Papua New Guinea. And as I understand it, no U.S. president has ever been to Papua New Guinea before. I was Joe Biden in Hiroshima. That's two great bombs in history. He's first we dropped August 6, 1945, and then we send Joe Biden. That's honestly another American bomb in Hiroshima. And they got Rahm Emanuel there, and it's Blinken and Sullivan and Nod, honestly. But then he was going to go to Papua New Guinea, and no U.S. president has ever been to Papua New Guinea before. It's a big island north of Australia. And the Chinese are making moves with their growing navy throughout the region down there. And they canceled. By the way, New Guinea had announced it was going to be a national holiday. They had declared a national holiday in New Guinea because the President of the United States was coming. No president ever visited before. So they declared it a national holiday, and Joe Biden said, we're going to cancel. And then he was going to head on to Sydney, Australia. He was supposed to be in Papua May 22nd, and then on to Sydney, Australia, May 23rd and May 24th. But he canceled. Because he's got to come back here to talk about the debt ceiling, which he's botched, and the Republicans have offered to increase the debt limit by $1.5 trillion, which will take thousands of years to pay off. But that's not enough. They got to increase the debt limit by, I guess now $14 trillion because Cori Bush and reparations, something like that. So forget the national holiday in New Guinea. Forget the presidential visit to Papua. Forget the visit to Sydney. And by the way, the officials in Sydney are stepping up and saying, this is a catastrophe for the region, the president canceling this because he's a domestic political failure, because the Chinese are making moves all over the place over there, intimidating, threatening, and it was going to be of great significance, the president of the United States visiting. But they pulled the plug because they got a stupid political domestic fight here. No, you need to raise the debt limit more. Oh, you guys are trying to default the country, and it's all political BS. And then they go to Asia, and it's all blown up. It's a disaster. The boy is a disaster. All right, let's go to let's see. Yes, Joe Biden. He's all about that. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to David calling from Fairfax, Virginia. David, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, sure.
I was wondering if the descendants of the slaves would be willing to pay reparations to the 360,222 Union soldiers, the descendants of those Union soldiers who died freeing them.
Huh. You're getting all caught up in history and technicalities and, all get caught up in who killed who. Come on. This is about racial division, David. This is... No. That's what they want it to be about, but the truth of the matter is none of us owned slaves, and none of them were slaves. Yeah, and I'm not aware of anyone in the history of my family that was ever involved in it. I could scratch the surface further, but, my peeps came over from the Basque territories long after slavery, and my Irish people came over. As far as I know, almost all the Irish came over long after all that. And then they got hit over the head with billy clubs and thrown into the back of paddy wagons. So let's all sue each other. What do you think? This is the Democrat Party plan. It's really about election day politics, racial division, and breaking us down into racial camps to pit us against one another, because that's what the left does. And remember, these aren't liberals. This is the left.
Please! This is supposed to be a happy occasion. Let's not bicker and argue about who killed who.
All right, I've got Al Sharpton for you today. I got Hollywood news. I've got Bud Light news. Got a lot of news. But right now, let's get to the Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, I'm going to go to the Newsmax story online, releases report on COVID origins. COVID origins. Senator Marco Rubio released a lengthy report, more than 300 pages, on the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic that presents circumstantial evidence for an accidental lab leak in Wuhan, China, being the cause. Imagine that. Here's Marco Rubio, a video posted.
They were doing things that virtually no other labs in the world would dare do because of how dangerous, how risky, how unsafe they are. But in China, they were doing it. They want to become the world's dominant power in every field, and one of those is biomedicine. And to do that, they have to cut corners and they have to make decisions about what they're going to prioritize, progress or safety. So what the impact of this political pressure is on Chinese researchers is they're told flat out that we're going to prioritize making progress.
They're going to move forward with their bio programs, and safety be damned. So 7 million people, or 7 million deaths attributed. His report says that Chinese officials they warned about problems at the Wuhan lab back in late 2018, and then China hides documents from the world in November of 2019. And there's a nice lady that wrote an exhaustive book about it. Her name is Sherry Markson. Sherry Markson was on the television today talking about Marco Rubio's 300-page report.
I think where Marco Rubio has gone stronger than anyone else before is in his conviction that the Chinese Communist Party leadership knew that there was a lab leak and knew far in advance. So in my book, What Really Happened in Wuhan, I detail that there was an outbreak as early as September, October 2019. But what Marco Rubio has done is he said he's confident that the Communist Party leadership became aware of the outbreak and then sought to cover it up.
Which is not really a big deal because they're communists, and 7 million dead here, 7 million dead there. That doesn't bother the Chinese communist leadership, which is seeking to dominate the Pacific region for openers, and Africa and Latin America. And Joe Biden decided to blow off that part of the trip.